Li He, about horses, three selections. This steed is no ordinary horse, but the very spirit of the Fang star. Stand in front, rap on its slender bones. They'll ring out like bronze. Last month of the year, grassroots taste sweet. On the broad avenues, snow resembles salt. Before you know if your jaw is firm or soft, try first to bite on the bitter briars. The master dragon tamer has fled the world, and nobody today raises the dragon steed. When night comes and frost presses down on the stable shed, the bones of a brave steed crack in the west wind. So the three poems I've read, they're three short ones. They are quatrains. Jueju is composed of 4 lines. These poems are all part of a series of 23 that Li He wrote about horses. Now, first thing to bear in mind is, why does Li He write 23 poems about horses? It seems that he was born on the year of the horse. So that would make the animal, which was actually a very valuable creature for the most part in ancient China, especially during the Tang Dynasty, because in the Chinese heartland there weren't proper places, proper pastures for the breeding of horses, and horses were a key tool in the Tang Empire's war machinery. They were bought by the thousands in the markets of the northwest. So sorry. So horses were, a rather valuable commodity. Li He, like most scholar officials, had a very high opinion of himself, and it's a very typical trope in scholar official poetry to use an element of nature or of society as a stand-in, as a symbol for the poet. And that's what we're getting in these poems. We're getting the poet implicitly describing himself as a prized, beautiful, worthy, noble horse who is not recognized, who is not valued. You will remember from previous poems that we've commented examples of this strategy. So already in the Chizhu and the songs from the south, you have poets depicting themselves as shamans or shamanesses, or as women, as concubines who long for the attention of the king, and they're very transparent metaphors of a scholar official who wants to catch the attention of the sovereign. And here we have the same thing. Remember, Li He, although he came from a minor branch of the imperial family, and although he was a very, very talented writer, never succeeded in the examinations for different reasons that it would be too long to detail. So he was, from his point of view, a complete failure, because a scholar, what the Chinese writer of the Tang Dynasty wants to be is a scholar official, and literary talent, or for which Li He was recognized in his own day. That was a minor adornment. It wasn't the essential thing. One used literary talent to become a scholar official, to pass the notorious Jinshi examination, and then participate in helping the sovereign rule. So, these poems fall in line with a very, very traditional topic in Chinese poetry, which is the scholar official complaint. The scholar official's complaint at either not being selected and becoming a scholar official. Du Fu has poems like this. Or once you have become a scholar official, you're not employed. Anyway, so they're short poems, they're quatrains. And so in a quatrain, even in a regulated poem, you only have 8 lines. If it's pentasyllabic, you don't have that much of a space for giving a big depiction of a scene or of an anecdote. That usually happens in the longer old style poems, which have no restrictions as to the number of lines. A quatrain is even more synthetic. Like a quatrain is two couplets, it's two lines, so generally it's just the illustration of an image. They're a bit like Greek epigrams, they have to be very sententious, very brief, ideally very witty. And in these poems, the topic is, as I said, the explicit topic is a horse that is suffering and that is not being treated as it should, and the implicit topic is the scholar official Li He is not awarded the positions he deserves and does not serve the ruler. So let's take a look at the poems. The first one that I read, I think it's number 4 of the series, and is translated by J.D. Frodsham in the Poems of Liho. Let's read it again, couplet by couplet, and comment a little bit on it. This steed is no ordinary horse, but the very spirit of the Fanged Star. So, the first couplet starts very strictly, very, very squarely and directly. This is a special horse. This is not like other horses. As I said, Li He was recognized for his literary talent. Han Yu, one of the greatest of Tang poets ever, of Chinese poets also, was his patron. There was another one, but this wasn't enough, it seems, to overcome the obstacles. So, the poet is very, very proudly asserting his merit. So he's not an ordinary horse, he's the very spirit of the Fang Star. So the Fang Star, from a note in Frodsham, seems to be a constellation represented by 4 horses in the heavens. So, he's a super horse, he's the essence of a heavenly horse. Second couplet, so the first couplet, just directly states, this is a super horse, the one who's talking to you. And the second couplet illustrates it. You could say it makes it more descriptive. Stand in front, rap on its slender bones. They'll ring out like bronze. So this horse is almost statue-like, and it's made of a precious metal. Bronze was not gold or silver, but it was a valuable metal. The ancient vessels of ancient China were made of bronze. So stand in front, rap on it. This is it's an interesting couplet because it gets, the first couplet describes or states, stative, it states how this horse is amazing. The second couplet invites the listener, the viewer, to come and, check for himself the value of this horse, rapping its slender bones and hearing that, they're made of pure metal, they ring like bronze, this is a good horse. Yeah? Or I suspect I'm not sure if the slender bones are meant to reflect elegance or fragility, because Li has suffered from illnesses all through his life, and he died very young, in his 20s, I believe. Okay, so this was Frodsham's version. The other 2 versions are by Irvin Y. Lowe, and they are included in Sunflower Splendor. First couplet. Last month of the year, grassroots taste sweet. On the broad avenues, snow resembles salt. So here the start is different. We get the season. We didn't get any seasonal indications in the previous poem. This couplet begins with a seasonal indication, and it has 2 elements that are in the background of the season. Grass roots, probably because the grass leaves have withered because it's winter. Already winter, the image of winter, the setting of winter, plays off an ominous tone, because winter is the season of death and execution and misery and cold. So it's the last month of the year, winter. And what do we have around? We have grassroots and snow in the broad avenue, so probably we're in the capital. And both things are equated with both things are associated with what they taste like or what they look like. So there's an association: grassroots, sweetness; snow, salt. So the horse is hungry. This is winter. The horse has probably experienced the rigors of the season. He's probably very hungry, so even the grass roots taste sweet. I have no technical knowledge to know if this is literal, if we can interpret this literally as true. Maybe the roots of grass do taste sweet, or maybe the horse is just so famished that even the grass roots, in the lack of any living grass, taste sweet enough to his hungry belly. I would probably choose the second interpretation because I think it matches with the lugubrious and dark tone of the whole poem. On the broad avenues, snow resembles salt. Horses like eating salt. So the horse is looking around, he's seeing snow, and that's probably tantalizingly painful. Like the horse can chew a little bit of the cold snow. It's not like chewing a little bit of salt, but it does look like it, which makes it present and absent and a bit of a torture, you could say. But if things were not bad enough, they're going to become worse in the second couplet. Before you know if your jaw is firm or soft, try first to bite on the bitter briars. So if current inconveniences and unhappinesses and sufferings were not enough, you will still have bitter briars to eat. Yeah, and then the horse will know by chewing at the briars whether his jaw is firm or soft. If it's firm enough, it will be able to swallow the bitter, thorny briars. A note here says that these thorny briars are Tribulus terrestris, which is a really spiny plant. So an unpleasant experience, definitely. The horse has been suffering in the cold and in the hunger, and he'll probably have to suffer more. So it's a depiction of Li Hei's suffering and frustration in winter in the capital. Moving on to the last one. The master dragon tamer has fled the world, and nobody today raises the dragon steed. So the poem, again, these poems are short. They have to begin with a punch. So the reference is in the text to Liu Shu or Liu Shuan, who was a legendary tamer of rare animals in the time of the legendary Emperor Shun. So, the explicit message is, we no longer have these great horse trainers. It's called dragon tamer because the best type of horses were called, as the second line shows us, dragon steeds. They're like the top horses, they're like dragons. So the great trainer is no longer here. He's a figure from the remote past, from legend and antiquity, and nobody raises the dragon steed. And the image is pretty clear, pretty explicit. The poet is depicting himself as this great dragon steed, but there's nobody to raise him, to recognize him, to exercise patronage over him and help him get the recognition he deserves. So the first couplet states the message, and the second one depicts the scene in which this dragon steed is actually languishing, with a very sad, melancholy image. When night comes and frost presses down on the stable shed, the bones of a brave steed crack in the west wind. So again, we have, like in the first of the poems we read, we have this winter imagery. Yeah, it's sorry, not the first, the second one. All this winter imagery, which winter is associated with decadence and death. So it's a cold night, winter probably. The frost is pressing down, the horse is shivering, its bones are cracking in the cold western wind. The dragon horse is not recognized and he is experiencing suffering, anguish, misery. So altogether, three very illustrative poems on using this image of a horse for representing the scholar official whose merit is unrecognized.